What's up, everybody? Today we've got a project starting with 50% less wheels. Okay, take two, which is fitting because the project we're talking about today has 2 wheels instead of 4. Welcome back, everybody. My name's Andrew, and this is a Make It and Break It YouTube channel where we do a lot of projects in the motorsports arena, and we show you guys the entire process from designing it to building it to sending it on a racetrack, dirt track, whatever we feel like doing. Prior to this, we have hinted that we're going to do a 2-wheeled motorcycle project, but we've never actually introduced it to you, which I feel a little bad about. So we're going to make up for it here. A little bit of history on this project. I've been riding motorcycles for about, 6 years now? A little over 6 years now. And I started on a street bike. Bought a 99 Yamaha R6 as my first bike, which may or may not have been a smart purchase. Actually, I love the bike. It was a great purchase. I just wouldn't necessarily suggest a bike like an R6 for your first bike. And I immediately started riding with some of my coworkers at the time who took approximately yearly trips somewhere or another. So that next year, I took that Yamaha R6 on a trip from the very northwest corner of Washington down to the Redwoods along US Highway 101 and back, which was, I think for me, about a 2,600 mile round trip. Those of you who are over 5'6" and have ever ridden on a sport bike know that that's not particularly comfortable. So a year-ish later than that, a couple years after that, I picked up what I would consider a comfortable sport bike, more comfortable sport bike anyway, and that's my Ducati Street Fighter, which may or may not make some appearances here on this channel. We'll see if it has a use. And that has pretty much supplanted my R6 as my go-to motorcycle. I've taken a few trips on that thing. Up through, the longest one was probably running about 3,000 miles, starting in the Seattle area, up into Canada, along the border, down into Glacier National Park, and back. And that was awesome. And the Ducati didn't even go all Italian on me, so that was cool too. But it was last year. I'd always kind of wanted to get into dirt biking and going and taking motorcycles out on the dirt. Last year I actually took my first dirt biking trip, borrowed a TW200 from my coworker, and we went and rode a bunch of dirt roads for a few days out in Central Oregon, and that kind of got me hooked, which meant I needed to get a dirt bike myself. Problem is, I don't have that much money. I mean, I do the YouTube thing now, which with a channel this small means I don't have thousands and millions of dollars of budget. Please go. Nope. All right, fuck you then. I don't have huge budgets with which to go buy myself my dream off-road bike, which is probably a Multistrada 1200S Enduro, one of the newer ones that are supposed to be super sick. But in any case, I don't have that sort of budget, and honestly, going out and buying a bike is just a little boring for a purpose, at least for me. So I decided to build it, which brings us to this thing. making a dirt bike out of my, there we go, 99 Yamaha R6. What makes this bike so cool, in my opinion, is that it's kind of the OG 600 racer. So before 99, when Yamaha came out with this, and I think in 2000 when they came out with the R1, your racing bikes were your like YZ-600Rs or whatever they were called. They all still, or the bikes that are available to you, they all still had handlebars and everything else that made them much more road bikes than race bikes. These ones, on the other hand, were basically race bikes that they put some turn signals on, put some actual lights in, and called it good. Which is good and bad for us for a couple reasons. First, its age is actually not the worst thing in the world. So this thing is analog to the core. It doesn't have ABS. It doesn't have, fuel injection, electronic fuel injection. It's a carbureted bike. It's got no electronic suspension bits and goodies. There's none of the cool wheel speed sensors or yaw sensors or anything else that you'll find in a modern super sport bike. It's as basic as they come, which makes it really interesting if you're learning to ride it, because ABS is kind of nice to have. Although I've never ridden a bike with ABS, so maybe you just don't need it. And that sort of aged analog makes it kind of nice to service, because it's really built to be taken apart by a smaller set of hand tools. You don't need special electronics gadgets to start everything. You can open up carburetors and everything else. So if something goes wrong and you're out on a trail, you have a much better shot of fixing it. If it's because there's really nothing electronic that you can break on this bike. What also makes sport bikes actually pretty decent, what makes them not the worst basis for a dirt bike or something that you want to go take off-road, is that they're very light. So race bikes want to be light because they want to go fast, and the heavier a bike is, the harder it is to turn. Turning becomes worse. Your overall acceleration and speeds become either more power intensive or worse, depending on what you're talking about there. So this bike is actually pretty light for a bike that makes over 100 horsepower, which was kind of my personal requirement. I mean, you don't really need 100 horsepower to go off-road, but I want 100 horsepower because I do. So for bikes that make 100 horsepower, and this thing I think weighs in wet somewhere around the 400-pound mark. I've ridden bikes off-road that were much less powerful, and weighed at least as much. Oh, and the last benefit about using this bike, it's cheap. So the cheapest Project car, bike, whatever, is the one you already have. So I've owned this thing outright for 6 years now, super cheap, and it's probably going to be cheaper for me to fab new stuff than to just go buy a dedicated dirt bike in most cases, outside of the suspension. Everything else is probably cheaper for me to fab than to go get. So I'm trying to keep it budget conscious here. But there's also some downsides. So the first downside we're looking at here is the suspension. So this is your front fork setup, and I do believe these are even like conventional forks where the thin rod goes up, as opposed to most modern bikes which have upside down forks. The upside down is a little bit stronger, a little bit less bendy. They don't torque nearly as easily. Not necessarily saying these are weak, but that's not ideal. But the suspension on this bike is built to go racing around Le Mans or the Ridge where I go race my cars. It's built for a circuit track. It's not really built for a lot of hopping up and down or hitting rocks or anything like that. So while it's good, and it is actually adjustable, which is kind of nice to see on a bike this old, the suspension is not ideal. There's things we can do with the suspension to make it more compliant, and we can even go replace it, which we probably will have to do with some more long travel stuff, and in order to make it a much better off-road bike. But that's going to be a problem.
The other problem kind of comes with the age of this bike is that it's kind of the first years. This one's a 99. The tail section, those of you who really know your bikes, that's a 2001 or 2002 tail section. The previous owner swapped it out because he liked it, the look of it better. I'm gonna end up taking most of this off anyway. This bike is the first generation, and the R6 really didn't pick up here and doesn't pick up here in the aftermarket coverage until about 2001, 2002, which is that next generation. They get, I think they get fuel injection on the bike. They still don't have ABS, but they get fuel injection, which means that there's really not a whole lot of off-the-shelf parts for us. We might be able to pick up an off-the-shelf triple clamp up here that will let us run handlebars instead of clip-ons. Clip-ons are these little things that are not a full handlebar that connect. They just bolt in right on one side or the other. They're meant to keep you as low as possible and take up as little weight as possible. Anyway, so outside of a couple of those things, kits don't really exist, which means we're going to be fabricating pretty much from scratch. Since no one really builds crash protection for these sorts of bikes, and the seat needs to change a lot, and a bunch of other stuff about the ergonomics, we were really going to have to build a bunch of custom stuff anyway. Finally, and what's most important to me is your foot control. So this is a sport bike, which means it has a rear set, which means when you're sitting on it, your feet actually, your legs go out like this and then curve back at least under you or further down. Most dirt bikes and off-road bikes and standard bikes even would have a set right up about here, and that's where all your foot controls would be. And that is kind of like a, I forget, I think it's called the standard. It might be called a vertical set. That lets you get a little bit more leverage. It's a little bit more comfortable, you got more room in the legs, and also on an adventure bike or off-road bike, the key thing is you can stand up without like having your head way out over here, unless the bike's way too small, in which case you look like you're trying to do push-ups while you're riding off-road. And then those of you who ride cruisers or have seen cruisers, a lot of them have forward controls, which are out somewhere up here. That's a lot more comfortable. You can kick your legs out a bunch, but it's not really conducive to controlling the bike very well by moving your weight around. You have to basically, the only way to control the bike by weight movement is to move around in the seat. And in my opinion, those kind of riders don't typically move around the seat much. So one of the biggest things we're going to have to do, besides getting some crash protection up front here, is change this, the foot controls to more of a standard straight up and down foot control setup. So what's the plan for this thing? Well, this is going to kind of be like a catch-all project. We try and fit in where we can between the cars. Our Project Ute is actually specifically concepted to take this to like trailheads and stuff, so I don't necessarily have to ride all the way there and back on dirt tires, and our RX-8 race car build, stuff like that. But I do have a camping trip at the end of August-ish, which is give or take about a month away, that I really do want to take this on and go ride it out on the beach. So this project's going to be happening in multiple stages. There's going to be stage one, which is like your quick and dirty conversion to a dirt bike. If you've seen the Moto Corsa, I think it's the Terra Corsa or something like that, a Ducati dealership that I actually bought my Ducati from down in Portland, took an 1199 Panigale, put some dirt tires on it, put like a little bit of a bash bar underneath, and basically sent it. And they took like a 3-day off-road trip. So we're going to do roughly a similar thing here. We're going to try and put some dirt tires on this thing, get our suspension up as high as possible. That dude likes the plan. And then go hoon around on a beach. And that'll be stage one. Stage two will be a little bit more work. So what we're gonna do is probably put some crash protection, redesign our front here to make it a little bit more adventure friendly. and probably redesign our tank setup too, so that we have a little bit more control in our seats and make it a little bit more adventure bikey, as opposed to a street bike with dirt wheels. Which, those of you who have been interested in wondering what a street bike with dirt wheels behaves like off-road, well, we're gonna go try that out here in about a month. So that's the project concept, everyone. Stay tuned for more videos on this as we go. We'll probably start adding these in between our RX-8 and 300C and every other build we do. This one won't be nearly as regular release schedule though. So thanks for watching, everyone. My name's Andrew. This is the Make and Break It YouTube channel. If you like this video, hit like. If you got comments, suggestions, concerns for this project, I'm definitely willing to listen. The first steps on this thing are pretty much set in stone. Put some dirt tires on it and go. But after that, I am wide open for suggestions and ideas on this project. If you like what we're doing in this channel, we got our Ute build, our RX-8 race car build, this thing, and we go do our Finanigans episodes. So if you like what we're doing in this channel, go ahead and check it out. Subscribe, hit that little bell icon thing, and thanks for watching us here at Make It and Break It, where our channel motto really is, don't make it hard, make it up. Sometimes that works. Oh, that is some terrible helmet hair right there. Let me get my sunglasses on.